Okay, hi everyone, welcome back. So originally I actually wanted to make this update for my special members, but I was like, you know what, since a lot of people are right now in panicking due to BTC basically I would say crashing big time, maybe it is time to talk about Bitcoin a little bit and tell you why this probably isn't the end. This might, in my view, be the beginning for specifically in today's update, we are going to talk about QNT. So in today's video, we are first things first going to talk about this very important article and remind ourselves why we are investing in Quant. And then I'm actually going to do an Elliott Waves analysis in Bitcoin and tell you what is probably the next likely move. And based on it, I'm going to try to explain why, in my view, number one, right now it's probably not the time to sell. And number two, I think in Quant, we are going to see some good moves on the upside. So are we ready? Let's dive in and see what is going on. And we are going to start with the core idea of this very, very important article, which if you got time, I would highly suggest to just give it a read yourself. You see, in this article, Quant is not really talking to regular users. No, they are targeting the real people who actually run the financial plumbing. And we are talking about COOs, risk teams, operation managers, you name it all. This article basically points to a massive problem sitting behind global finance, and this is a problem that most people do not even see. But trust me, I'm going to explain to you why this is actually such an important deal. And Quant, well, they are trying to say that, look, QuantNet can actually fix this very, very important issue. So the first thing that we need to understand is the difference between trading and the post-trade. Trading is essentially the part that everybody sees. You click buy or sell, and through that process, the chart moves. And it all feels very much instant, but the real work actually happens after the trades and behind the scenes. That is exactly where clearing, settlement, and reconciliation comes in. And this is really the part where the asset legally changes hands and the money actually moves. And this, my friends, is very slow, absolutely complicated, and sometimes it could be a bit messy. Now, here's the problem. You see, as banks and institutions start creating tokenized assets, including, for example, digital bonds, maybe tokenized deposits, and other programmable form of money, they built all of these things in isolated systems, meaning one bank is going to have its own ledger for digital assets. Another bank is going to have a separate ledger for digital cash. None of these ledgers essentially are able to talk to each other perfectly. And because of that, reconciliation has become a serious headache in here. Everybody has their own version of the truth. So banks essentially need to hold huge liquidity buffers just in case that something is going to fail during the settlement. And that means billions of dollars stuck doing, well, basically absolutely nothing. And this is exactly where QuantNet is positioned as the orchestrator. And it's very, very important to understand for those of you who are new viewers, Quant is not really a new blockchain. No, it is a layer that sits above all the existing ledgers to connect them all. And those systems can be, for example, legacy payments, maybe private networks, maybe public networks, you name it all. Quant is able to connect all of them, and the key feature in here is that it can coordinate atomic settlements. And if you don't know what atomic settlement means, you need to check out, I think it was 2 videos back. It essentially means that the bond and the money move all at the same time. And if one side is going to fail, or maybe it's going to have some sort of a problem, the whole thing is going to cancel very much instantly. And this is a translation for no counterparty risk, which is awesome. Now, the smart part of their pitch is that the banks do not really have to rebuild anything, okay? QuantNet is able to plug into the systems that those guys are already using through normal APIs, and it is an add-on layer, not necessarily a replacement. And you might ask, well, okay, what's the business case in here, and why is it that banks should actually use QuantNet? You see, this article mentions that banks can reduce collateral lockups by about 10 to 20%, and for institutions holding billions and billions of dollars in liquidity buffer, well, freeing up even like a fraction of that is like a massive financial advantage. So this is the business case for you. The banks don't really have to use Quant just because it is something new and shiny. No, they want to use it because they want to make quite a good bit of money. Now, let's talk about the possible realistic effects of this in QNT's future, because when you look at the direction that Quant is moving, well, it seems like that the long-term effect is becoming more and more clear. And this article basically hints that there is actually a future where QuantNet can become a relatively large player when it comes to settlements. And today, Swift actually tells the banks what to do. It sends the messages, but it doesn't really actually move any money. Quant, well, it actually is designed to coordinate the actual settlements across all the different ledgers. And if this is going to work the way that they intended, well, QuantNet could potentially become the backbone that connects traditional systems with new tokenized networks. Now, another thing that this article tries to normalize is the idea that the gap between crypto and traditional finance is disappearing over time. Tokenized assets will probably blend into existing workflows, and your average trader, let's be honest, doesn't really care whether a security lives on a blockchain or maybe on a traditional registry. With an orchestration layer managing every single thing in the background, it all is going to feel absolutely smooth, and you're just going to see every single thing on one screen, which is actually the key to mass adoption. Then there's also the utility side of the stuff, and if QuantNet is going to become the settlement layer for some banks, well, this means constant traffic flowing through the systems, and banks will settle trades, reconcile positions, and move tokenized assets across many different ledgers using just one simple layer. And that process requires licensing and access, which is tied directly, you guessed that right, to the QNT token itself. Okay, after all, why are we so bullish on what Quant is doing? Is it because of themselves? No, not really. It's because of the effects of what they are doing on the token itself. And I think if they manage to attract a lot of adoption, which, well, right now at least it seems like that they are definitely on that track, well, overall, since we are having a supply capped at, I think it was about 14.5 million tokens, we can safely assume that demand over time is going to go up. And the only way for the price, given the situation, you know what, it is going to be up in the mid to long term. So this, my friends, is why I am such a big fan of QNT. And well, okay, let's just say this and also the chart, because we are looking in the mid to long term, in my view, absolutely magnificent. And I do think that by the end of this cycle, we are going to witness some great moves on the upside. But right now, well, we can definitely say that a lot of investors are panicking, since in BTC we are seeing such an insane move on the downside. And you notice that not a lot of altcoins are actually cooperating with BTC, right? It seems like that the recent drop was sort of kind of specific for Bitcoin, and I see on Twitter a lot of people calling for the absolute top to be in, and they are saying that Bitcoin is going to go to the zero and we are just going to go straight down. Now, because of this, I'm going to do actually a full Elliott Waves analysis on BTC, and I'm going to tell you why right now at least is not really the time to sell. So having said that, now let's go first things first on Bitcoin's chart and see what is going on. Okay, here we are. And first things first, let's talk about the idea when we were actually above this very important support in BTC between, let's say, 99.5 to about $104,000. And I was saying, look, odds are starting from this point and not the highest high, we are having an A, B, C in form of an expanded flat. And when we were around these areas, I was actually talking a bit bullish, and the idea was that maybe this is 1, 2, and then another 1 and 2, and we're gonna have a good move up into wave 3, 4, 5. And I had this very important point as my invalidation point for at least this bullish scenario, indicating the bottom is in. And when we got this move down, I was like, well, okay, in that case, we should say we are having maybe a WXY in form of a flat and a zigzag. And do not get me wrong, I mean, sure, we can still argue that this is like a WX and maybe the end of our wave Y is going to be in here. However, in a flat and a zigzag, whenever you are having maybe like an ABC expanded flat into your wave W, that's usually a sign of a weakness, meaning what? In the next leg down into your zigzag, into your wave Y, you're not necessarily going to witness like a massive, strong move on the downside. The current move down that in BTC we are in my view, does actually show a lot of the characteristics of an impulse and not necessarily like a correction structure. And that is where the real mystery starts. First things first, what is going on in terms of classic TA, meaning support and resistances? You see, unfortunately, well, when we got a break of this thing, the next target naturally was right in here. And for like a very brief period of time, we did get a bit of a reaction from this level. And if I just go on daily time frame, right? Yep, absolutely. So you see, when we got this candlestick right in here, I was like, well, okay, this is a hammer that is happening around a very important support, and also at the same time we had an increase in volume. So I was like, yeah, you know what, maybe we are going to have a move on the upside, but we didn't. And the next candle was still some sort of a bullish candlestick because we got such a great looking lower shadow. But the moment that in the next candlestick right in here, actually last night we were having this face down, I was like, yeah, you know what, the result of this is probably going to be a massive move on the downside. Why? Because simple reason, actually. You see, in these two very important candlesticks, we saw massive buy volume showing up, but in the next candle, bears actually proved that they are here and they are fully in control. Meaning what? Yep, since they are in control, you are going to see some great moves on the downside. In other words, essentially bulls actually failed to hold this very important level. Question is, where can be a likely target for our move down? And I think it comes down to this thing right in here. Let's just stretch it a bit more. As you can see, we did actually get quite close to it, but we didn't completely get there. And I do think that we are actually going to get in here about between, let's say, 78 to about $79,600. Now, why is this level so important? For two reasons. Number one, this thing right in here is from weekly and daily time frame at the same time. So trust me when I tell you, this actually has quite a lot of validity, and I do think that off of this level, we are going to get a pass. Reason number two, you see, under this level, we are actually having this important slow. And I do have a bit of a hard time believing that in Bitcoin, even if we are in a bear market, we are going to at first get a move down and take this low and then have some sort of a pass. No, most likely before taking the lows, again, this is assuming that we are in like a massive bear market, which I think we are not, but let's just play the devil's advocate in here and say we are in a bear market. In a lot of cases, generally before we take the previous major pivot low, we are actually going to witness a rather good move on the upside, and then maybe from here we are going to start going down once more big time. So right now in Bitcoin, I think we are quite close to the end of our move down, and we are going to have some sort of a bounce in the next couple of weeks. And just because we are around this support doesn't necessarily mean that we are going to get a move on the upside. But thankfully, I do have a couple of more reasons to think, yeah, you know what, we are going to get a move up. And one important reason, definitely in my view, comes down to what is going on in RSI indicator, because I think we can all safely assume that nothing is going to go up or down in a straight line. And I think we can all also agree on the fact that this move down in Bitcoin has gotten extended like way too much. How exactly we can figure out whether this is extended or not? Well, get help from RSI. And where are we in RSI? Let's just do this, zoom out a little bit more and mark this level. When did we in RSI get to such levels? It was in one example right in here. And what happened in BTC, as you can see, we got a great move on the upside. You can also maybe sort of kind of argue these and these also do count, and every single time that we got to these levels in RSI, that actually marked some sort of a midterm low. How about this one? We also saw a low in here forming in BTC during the previous bear market, and in the short term we got a move on the upside. How about this time? Yes, we also marked a low, followed by that we got a bit of a bounce, and also in this case right around this area we also saw yet another bounce. And a spoiler alert, I think we might be in this situation most likely. Now let's just zoom in more and see what is happening in BTC. Okay, so far we realized that we are quite close to the end of this move down and we are going to get a bit of a bounce. Question is that bounce going to be maybe like an insane move on the upside in order to once more set an all-time high and take the highest high all the way up here about $126,500 against all odds? I think it might actually be. And now let's talk about Elliott Waves in here. And I think we do have quite a bit to talk about, because if we wouldn't have gotten this specific move down in BTC, maybe in here I was actually going to be bearish. But trust me when I tell you, this sucker absolutely messes with the chart. Why is that? Because let me ask you this. How exactly are you able to find in the last leg up in Bitcoin, starting from the lowest low in here about 107.5K, a 5 wave on the upside? I do not believe that you are able to find an impulse in here. And if you are, let's just say this, the shape of that 5 wave is actually going to look so odd to a degree that is going to probably make you say, yeah, you know what, it shouldn't really be our base case. And our primary scenario, in my view, suggests that maybe this is an ABC zigzag, maybe even we are having a flat and a zigzag, and I am absolutely wrong. But let's just say, okay, we're not going to have a flat and a zigzag. Well, even in that case, you cannot really be bearish. You see, in Bitcoin, there is a chance that we are having a triangle structure in here. And right away, you might say, well, okay, can this be our A, B, C, D, E leg? The answer is absolutely 100% not. Why is that? You see, let's just do this. There we go. In an ABCDE on the downside, a triangular structure, you can have maybe something like this. This is a in our B leg. Okay, fair enough. Let's say we are going to go up and take this high, but you are 100% not allowed to go down and just take the low of your A leg and then call this thing your C leg, followed by a D and a wave E. No, if you want to be a bit flexible, you just can say maybe this B leg right in here is going to exceed our expectation, and in it we are going to take this high. But then again, all of these waves have to, again, very important point, have to happen within the length of our B leg right in here. So what's the idea in Bitcoin? Well, I'm gonna say, you know what? Yes, we are probably going to have a bit of a triangle structure in here. However, the beginning of our triangle most likely is not actually going to be in here, definitely nor here. I'm gonna say the beginning of our triangle is going to be right around this side. Now, let's just go around here because I forgot to tell you something. There we go. You see, in a triangular structure, like we said, that you can have something like this. And in terms of the subwaves, excuse me, we basically must have in every single wave ABC zigzags. There we go. ABC up into B, ABC down into C, ABC up into D, and this is our final ABC on the downside into RE. Now let's go on the live chart and count some of it. So here is what's going on in my mind. In my view, in Bitcoin, most likely, yes, this is, in my view, actually an ABC in form of a zigzag, and probably we are having to, at this point, a triangle for our wave B, followed by, am I going to say probably, yes, actually, an A to about here, correction for wave B, and maybe like a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 wave on the upside into our C leg. This is ABC down, so like this, there we go, 5 down into A, correction for wave B, excuse me, and another move down into C. And this can very well be ABC on the upside. This can be ABC zigzag down, and on a higher degree, what do you have? Probably starting from this point, excuse me, an A, B, C, D, E in form of a triangular structure. And that actually opens the doors. A 3-wave move on the upside in this whole phase, starting from here about 74K to about the highest high, about 126k. And overall, I'm gonna say, you know what? Maybe these are the sub waves for an A, B, C zigzag. And right now we are having an impulse, and on even like a higher degree, I'm actually going to entertain maybe the idea of having an A, B, C. Let's just hope it's going to be in form of a running flat, and that one looks like this. This is our initial move down into a correction for wave B, which in it we are going to take this important high right in here, and then a rather strong move down into our C leg, which is really going to scare a lot of people. But in this phase, we are not going to take the low of our wave A. Question: what if we are actually going to go down and we are going to take it? Well, in that case, not a lot is going to change. We're just going to call this thing an ABC in form of an expanded flat. Nonetheless, the sub waves are very much the same. Excuse me, my mouse is a bit glitchy. There we go. ABC down into A, ABC into B, followed by, yep, you know it, a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 wave on the downside into our C leg. So this thing right in here absolutely 100% justifies the fact that we are having like such a strong and insane move on the downside in Bitcoin, because, well, yes, this is actually an impulsive movement. And is it over or not? The answer, probably not. You see, in my view, this can be, according to actually sort of kind of an optimistic scenario, 5 down into 1 correction for wave 2. Let's be a bit generous and let's just ignore the small overlapping of the waves that we are having between this move on the upside and this one, and let's just call this thing a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 wave down into wave 3. And what are you going to have? Probably a correction for 4, another move down into wave 5. And here's a very important point. You see, a lot of the times when you are getting such an insane and a strong extended wave 3, for your wave 4 and 5, you are going to have a bit of a consolidation in here. But then for your wave 5, you are not really going to go a whole lot lower. And notice that at the beginning of the video, I told you we haven't really reached to about this important support yet. So makes sense from my POV to call for a correction structure on the upside in BTC, and then another move down in the next, let's say 2-3 weeks. And we are probably going to consolidate in here a little bit and build a bullish setup. And then it is going to be time to have a rather good move on the upside. Now, at that point, I'm probably going to say, I'm not going to say this with like absolute certainty, because let's be honest, there is no certainty in any market at any given moment. We are only talking about different possibilities. But at that point, if I see the right structures, I'm actually going to argue, you know what, this is A, this is B, this is 5 wave down into C, and it is time for a great move up in order to take the highs. But what if I'm actually going to be wrong? Because again, I'm not really that stupid, and I don't really believe that I am right always. No, in fact, in the recent move on the downside in BTC, I admit this, I fully got this one right. But I'm going to argue in this specific case, at least, it doesn't necessarily matter whether I am wrong or not. Why? Okay. You see, if I'm wrong and we are actually having a bearish scenario and you want to argue we have hit our final top, you know what? Fair enough. Then off of the highest side, you must be able to find a 5 wave on the downside. And that, my friends, is exactly what we are having off of the all-time high in BTC, about $126,000. Now, here's a very important point. Again, I'm going to say this, nothing is going to go up or down in a straight line. And Elliott Waves, guess what? Absolutely supports this thesis. Meaning, after a 5 wave down, what are you going to have even if I'm wrong and we are overall in a massive bear market? One way or the other, after completing this impulse, we are going to have a bit of a move on the upside. And how exactly can you know that maybe we are around the end of this impulse? Because of that RSI and also that important support area that I showed you earlier. So one way or the other, bullish or bearish, in Bitcoin, I think we are due for a rather strong bounce actually in order to get to about these areas. Preferably, I'm actually going to argue that we're going to get to about maybe this important resistance between 112 to about 117.5K. And if I just do maybe like a quick Fibonacci analysis in order to show you the levels, there we go. Okay, let's say we're gonna get our bounce around the 79K level. At that point, yep, guess what? The 78% of the Fibonacci retracement is right around this very, very important region. So I do think it is very much possible for Bitcoin to get back up, hopefully in the next couple of weeks, in order to get to here. And then, okay, if you want to be bearish, fair enough, you should call in these areas for a massive continuation of our move down. But that's not really the point. The point is, for now, number one, we are way overextended. And number two, because of the signs that I showed you, most likely in BTC, we are going to get a bit of a bounce. Now, at the beginning of the video, I said I do think that right now, at least, it's not really time to sell. Because in Bitcoin and also a lot of altcoins, we are seeing some moves on the downside. But when we are going to hopefully soon get a bounce in Bitcoin, what do you think that your altcoins are going to do? Yep, most likely they are also going to go up a bit. And then, okay, fair enough. If you think that we are not looking good, maybe at those higher prices, it is going to be time for you to sell. From my POV, probably the story is going to be way different. And the question is this: is there a chart that is suggesting, yeah, you know what, maybe during the next phase on the upside in Bitcoin, altcoins are actually going to outperform BTC quite a bit? I think the answer to that question is absolutely 100% yes. Point number one, you see, we are right now in that period of time where a lot of altcoins do actually have a habit of outperforming BTC. So this is definitely one positive point going for altcoins, but I don't necessarily care about that. I think the patterns can easily break, since I also do think that the Fourier cycle theory finally in this cycle, in my view, is going to break as well. Now, the chart that is really screaming something else is actually Bitcoin dominance, and we talked about this with our members a couple of times. You see, when we were around these areas, we were like, well, okay, if in Bitcoin dominance, we want to have a continuation of our move up, one very important target is going to be around this important resistance between 62.5 to about 65.5%. And mainly we said we care about this beautiful yellow gap that was created as a result of, believe it or not, this move on the downside. I think it was in weekly time frame, happening way too fast. And since we believe that gaps 95+% of the time are going to get filled, and also I think back then we were above this important level, I was like, yeah, you know what, let's get a move up to about this point, and then in an ideal scenario, we want to see an absolutely magnificent rejection from here, and then at that point, probably altcoins are going to outperform BTC quite a bit. Now, in terms of Elliott Waves, this is actually why I am so optimistic. You see, I'll be honest with you, nothing about this chart, let's just say this, almost nothing about this chart to me suggests that we are going to have a massive move on the upside and altcoins are going to absolutely get wrecked. I think in the next couple of weeks, let's say in the next 2 months, generally in altcoins, we are actually going to have a bit of a special situation. I'm not really going to call it an alt season. Maybe we are going to have an outright alt season, but generally this chart to me suggests that it wants to get a move on the downside, and that's what naturally leads to altcoin market maybe outperforming BTC a little bit. And in terms of Elliott Waves, what do you have? This, in my view, is a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 wave down, followed by an A, B, C on the upside. And the moment that we got this move up in Bitcoin, I actually believe that we were around these areas where I made a video for my members and I said, look, there is some sort of, I think back then was a resistance in here, and I said if you are going to end up getting a break of this thing, next target is going to be around this important right now resistance area. And this was exactly that massive, insane liquidation events that we got. And followed by that, we got an immediate move on the downside. And right away, I made a video and I said, yeah, look, most likely we are having a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 wave down in here. And any kind of move down in Bitcoin, as long as it's going to be a slow and choppy move, it's just going to be a consolidation pattern. Followed by that, you can expect another move down. And that's pretty much what happened. You see, in my view, this is like a very slow move on the upside. Let's just real quick measure it timing wise. As you can see, this took us about 526 candlestick, and this strong move down took us only 71 candlesticks. So this definitely suggests that bears do have a lot of power. And also, Since in this phase down in Bitcoin dominance, we took all the lows in here. Now finding an impulse in this region is going to be quite a bit of a challenge. Now, in my view, odds are this is going to be 5 down into 1. This is going to be correction for wave 2. And what's next? Great move on the downside into wave 3, 4, 5, which on a higher degree, I'm really hoping that that move is going to be into wave 3 and then correction for 4, another move down into wave 5. You know the story. But wait a minute. I just said in Bitcoin, we are actually way overextended and we are due for a bounce hopefully soon. So if Bitcoin is going to go up and at the same time, based on what we are having in here, Bitcoin dominance is going to go down, well, what's the conclusion? I think you know it. I believe that altcoins are actually a better place to be when we are going to get that bounce in BTC. And between a lot of altcoins, there are actually a couple that I really like their charts. For example, if in ICP, we wouldn't have gotten that insane move on the upside, that 400% move, and we were right now somewhere around, let's say, I don't know, maybe $2 area, I would have been able to tell you, yep, you know what, that's a great chart for buying. But unfortunately, we got that move on the upside. And right now, one of the rare few charts that I extremely like, you know it is going to be Quant's price chart, because we basically have every single possible excuse to go up big time in this chart. You see, for 4 long, annoying, boring years, we have been consolidating. And again, I'm going to say it. On one hand, as you can see in this beautiful chart, we have been constantly setting lower highs. And on the other, we have been constantly setting higher lows. In other words, the price is just getting more and more compressed. And one way or the other, we are going to see this pattern break. And if you are a fan of Elliott Waves, you can absolutely argue this is an ABCDE. And also in terms of classic patterns, you are allowed to call this thing a triangle structure. So this triangle, in my view, is going to break. The question is it going to break on the upside, or maybe is it going to break on the downside, and we are essentially going to visit the lows in here about $30? Well, based on the fundamentals and based on what we talked about in Bitcoin dominance, and also based on what is happening in Elliott Waves in this area, I'm willing to bet that this is going to break out, and hopefully we are going to in Quant maybe get like another 5 to 7% move on the downside in order to go under $64, because that's actually my average purchasing price. And at that point, if we go under $64, trust me, I am going to take advantage of that beautiful buying opportunity big time, because I do think we are going to start having a fantastic move up in QNT. So essentially, like we said it at the beginning of the video, I do not subscribe to that camp who believes this is literally the end. I think for a lot of altcoins, specifically in this case, I'm talking about QNT, I think this might actually very well be the beginning. And I do believe it's still on a great move on the upside, because in terms of Elliott Waves, let's go on H4 time frame. You see, in my view, this is still 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 wave up into 1, followed by most likely a flat structure into wave 2. And if you don't want to consider discount as your primary case, like I said it also in the previous videos as well, you can say maybe right in here we are going to hit the lows, and this is going to be, excuse me, our E leg right in here, and this is like a wave 1, 2, and again, what's next? You know it, massive move on the upside into wave 3 and 4 and 5. So as you can see, one way or the other, I think it is safe to say that we really do have a lot of reasons to be bullish on this chart. And also because in Bitcoin dominance, the setup that we are currently having looks really bearish. And at the same time, we believe that in Bitcoin, we are going to get a move up. Well, all things do translate to this. I think in the next couple of weeks, probably even the next 2 months, altcoins are going to outperform BTC when we are going to get a move up in Bitcoin. And one altcoin that I really like its chart, you know it is Quant. And because we are having great fundamentals, I think essentially we are having all the right excuses for a magnificent bull run. So I hope I explained that well and you understood what is going on in Quant. And I know this is, I think, about like a 37 minute video, but I just wanted to get this out of my chest because it's very important to understand that, again, nothing is going to go up or down in a straight line. And even if you believe that we are in a massive bear market, okay, even in bear markets, we are allowed to have bounces. And in the coming bounce that we are hopefully going to get soon in Bitcoin and altcoins, fair enough, sell your tokens, get out of the market. I wish you nothing but success in your future investments. From my POV, no, I'm probably going to stick around and invest in projects with solid fundamentals that are right now undervalued because, well, I told you before, I am a bit of a fair value investor and I do not mind waiting a little bit. I'm actually going to look at that as a beautiful buy the dip opportunity. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a like, consider subscribing to my channel, and maybe even if you are looking for some more, maybe an analysis for your own specific altcoin, you can become a member and ask me anything you want. And until the next update, I hope you have a wonderful time with your family and loved ones. Goodbye.